Welcome to Conversations on Healthcare. This week we welcome a teacher who survived the 2018 Parkland, Florida school shooting. Sarah Lerner published the book Parkland Speaks, stories from students and teachers who survived that trauma now being experienced in Texas. Now, here are your hosts, Mark Masselli and Margaret Flinter.
Our nation is once again facing a reckoning over mass shootings and gun violence. The latest tragedy at a Texas elementary school has left 19 children and 2 teachers dead. This follows the racist-motivated killing of 13 people at a Buffalo grocery store. Our guest has an important and personal perspective.
Sarah Lerner is a teacher at the Marjorie Stoneham Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, where 17 students were shot and killed just over 4 years ago. She's also a founder of Teachers Unify to end gun violence.
Sarah, thank you for joining us at this very tragic moment. And obviously, all Americans' hearts are breaking, and we simply can't make sense out of this situation. And you wrote an essay late last year in the New York Times that asked the question, will my students ever know a world without school shootings? And here we are just a few months after you wrote that piece, and unfortunately, we know the horrific answer. I'm wondering if you could share your thoughts.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be a part of this conversation. I don't even know where to begin about what happened yesterday. It is almost 2 weeks since the shooting in Buffalo. It is a little over 4 years after the shooting at my school. And here we are again, except this time it's an elementary school and they were just babies. And it just breaks your heart every time you hear about something like this, regardless of the setting and the circumstances. It's just terrible. And as a survivor, you know what those families and what that community, like what they're all feeling and going through. And it's just awful.
Well, Sarah, we're speaking to you from Connecticut, relatively close to Sandy Hook Elementary School, and our community health center was involved after that mass shooting in providing grief counseling and support. You've shared that you sought therapy and later were diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Can we take a moment to ask how you are doing, and what's your advice right now for your teaching colleagues at Robb Elementary?
I am okay. It was a very long, difficult night last night. Thankfully, I have a therapy appointment scheduled for tomorrow. So this is not good timing, but also good timing. I guess the advice I would have for those at Robb Elementary is to take care of themselves. It's very hard in the immediate to recognize your trauma. Like, you're in shock for days, and then you move through the stages of grief regardless of how intimately connected you were to the instance itself. But it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to seek help. It's not okay to just sit in it and allow yourself to kind of go down that rabbit hole. So, that's my advice for everyone who goes through something like this.
Well, thank you so much.
Help.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sarah. And I think, unfortunately, too many people have had to go through this situation. And, after the Parkland shooting, you were the editor of and a contributing writer for Parkland Speaks, and it was a book featuring art and writing from the Parkland students. How did that book help students deal with the grief that they were facing, and is it a vehicle for others to use as well?
Yeah, I believe that it is a vehicle for others to use. I have friends who teach in different parts of the country, and I know that they have used the book in their, in their classes as part of their curriculum around the anniversary and also at different times throughout the year. As far as the book coming together, I was approached by a senior editor at Random House in March of 2018. She'd asked if I'd be interested in working on an anthology of student work, artwork, photography, poetry, and prose. And of course, I said yes. So I spent the remainder of the school year, collecting all of that from the students. And I edited the book throughout the summer. I contributed 2 pieces myself. And then there were 2 other teachers who each contributed a piece. And what it ended up being is just this phenomenal piece of history. Mm-hmm. It is an incredibly heavy book. The students, were so happy to participate and get their voices and their stories out there because there hasn't been something like Parkland Speaks before. And, it tells the story of these kids who survived something like this and lost friends and, lost their innocence that day. And it was a lot to do, but it was important. And, I'm glad that people have responded well to it and, are able to read it and use it and take away from it.
So I wonder if you could share with us, how was the organization Teachers Unify Against Gun Violence created? And maybe share with us a little bit about its goals and its agenda, how that came to be and what its work is today.
Yeah, absolutely. So immediately after the shooting at Oxford High School at the end of November, Abby Clements, who was a teacher at Sandy Hook and is still a teacher in Connecticut, and Sarah Beth Rosenberg, who's a teacher in New York City. The 3 of us are in a group chat together, and Abby sent out a text. I want to say it was on a Saturday. She's like, so enough is enough. I think we need to start an organization to support teachers to work to end gun violence. And without skipping a beat, Sarah Beth and I were like, yep, we're in. Whatever you need, let's do this. And it just started that easily. And we have worked over these months to form this organization. We have a board, we have our tax exempt status, we have done panels that included Randy Weingarten, the president of AFT, Fred Guttenberg, who lost his daughter Jamie at the shooting at my school. Jamie was one of my students. We had on Dr. Joseph Saccharin, who is a trauma surgeon and a gun violence survivor himself, as well as others on that panel. We are working to make communities and schools safer because we know it's not just school shootings or gun violence at school. It's gun violence in communities of color. It's suicide by gun violence. It's domestic violence. And it all finds its way into school because it's the baggage and the trauma that these kids carry with them, or that you as the educator carry with you.
That simple proposition, enough is enough, should resonate with more people than it has. But we're glad you acted on this. And, we agree that gun violence is a public health issue, but not everyone sees it that way. In fact, surprisingly, in 1997, Congress ended funding for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention's gun violence research. Hard to believe. And it wasn't until 2020 the federal budget has finally restarted that funding. But I'm wondering what more we can do in the public health arena.
Oh gosh, I don't even know where to start. There's so much we can do. There need to be background checks. People who are 18 years old should not be able to access these firearms and weapons of war. You know, the Second Amendment is not just carte blanche to tote around your weapon anywhere and everywhere. You know, we no longer need a well-regulated militia. I'm not opposed to guns. If you feel that you need to have one to protect yourself and your family, that's fine. But a handgun is significantly different than an AR-15, which is the weapon of choice for all of these shooters. We need safe storage laws and regulations. We need to not have ghost guns. Like, there are so many things that can be done. And it's a shame that, 50 senators are holding this up and preventing all of this legislation from taking place, because children are dying, people of color are dying. Like, it should not be happening, and yet it continues to happen.
Sarah, almost everything we can talk about relative to this issue is hard to talk about. And I think that the last group I want to put any more burden on for anything is teachers and school administrators, whose job is pretty hard to begin with. But I think you've written that, looking back at the event in Michigan at Oxford High School, that maybe the threat hadn't been, possible threats hadn't been recognized or taken seriously enough before that mass shooting. What can teachers and administrators look for in terms of warning signs for something that might come from within their community? Have you looked at that? Have you tried to explicate that a bit?
I think as an English teacher, I see like the students writing, and, we in the English world are privy to journal entries and essays and things that, like a math teacher wouldn't be. So it's, we see those things and we read those things where other teachers might not. It's always hard to know, though, what a student is thinking or feeling if they're not forthcoming and open and honest and, share those things with you. So sometimes there aren't any warning signs. It's the last person you would expect. So, if it's like the saying, if you see something, say something, it's true. But sometimes you don't see things and there's nothing to say.
And Sarah, we see you in the classroom.
Yes.
You are obviously, as an English teacher, listening to words and writings all the time, taking the measurement of where students are. And, behavioral health issues have loomed large, not only relating to tragic incidences like this, but certainly the pandemic itself has created a sense of isolation. I'm wondering what you're seeing in terms of how would you sort of describe the mental health status of the students that you're encountering? What's the sense and feel on the ground in a classroom?
The students who are here on campus weren't students who were here that day. Like, all of those students have graduated. So in spite of that, there's still this understanding of, what a school shooting means. And, we practice code red drills and we do all of those things. I think when shootings have happened in years past, when we had those, 214 kids here, it was a much different feel in the immediate, aftermath of those other instances. Now they get it, but on like a tangential way, because they weren't actually here. but they've been practicing these code red drills and, lockdown drills for years because of what happened at our school. The vibe for me today, I've been distracted, thankfully, by yearbook distribution. So I haven't, been like sitting in it, but it's still been, what happened yesterday is definitely at the forefront of my mind and my thoughts. I haven't had many conversations with my students about it today, simply because it's also senior exams. So I haven't had many students here. But I know that it's been, part of their conversations amongst each other. I just haven't had much of an opportunity today to talk to them about it.
Well, Sarah, thank you for taking the time to join us. Thank you for sharing your reflections. Most of all, thank you for being a teacher every day. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Take care now. Thank you.
Thank you.